Good morning.
Good morning, Professor.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
You're the only one here, but that's fine because we're recording and uploading. It's a little bit of an unusual day for me because we just got vaccinated yesterday, and the first 24 hours are a little bit tough to get through. Nothing like the disease itself, of course, but so today is March the 31st. And this is LNM2, and it's the morning class at 11:10. And we're going to go through the homework with dominant 7 chord in root position and in second inversion. So the 5-7 chord and the 5-4-3 chord. So let me just claw into it and do a pretty short video. Because not only does the vaccine really, it does weaken you quite a lot. It actually feels like you have the flu itself for a while. I feel much better today. Yesterday was not easy, and we had to drive about 1,000 miles round trip to get our vaccine. Hello, admit everyone, I think. So I'm just gonna do it quickly today, and go through the homework, and then take one step further, and then I think pretty soon we will have everything we need for the rest of the semester. We're actually ending at the end of April. I don't know if you know that, but tomorrow is the 1st of April. Remind you that tomorrow is the big NIAC Scholars Symposium Day. Everything is canceled, and we all have to join that. And looking forward to that. Our own Carlos, Professor Carlos, is giving a presentation, and the theme for the entire day is that of racial reconciliation and for a more just society in the future. All very, very, very good, very pertinent, and things that we should all participate in as fully as we can. And we all do. Every day, we're New Yorkers, we live in the real world, etc., etc. So let me just go through this here. So B flat, you can all see the board. Yes. Is it clear to you, or should I move my camera closer? Maybe it's okay. Seems good enough. In the key of B flat. 5, 7, and 1. That's how it looks. Yeah, good. All right, not a problem. The way that I would recommend that you do, just write out the baseline first. First, say to yourself, what is scale degree 5 in B flat? If you need to do it, write up a B flat major scale, the way that you usually do, whole, half, no, E flat then, and then a whole step up, put it up here, and that's really all you need. And you know that it's F. So you put F here in the bass, and you immediately resolve that to B flat, either up or down. Given the key, up would be pretty high though, so you can either go down or up, depending on what sort of gives the best voice leading, the best architecture, so to speak. Do that first. Okay? And since you've now decided that this voice goes down, then have the one voice that goes up. I'm going to continue here a little bit, whole step, another whole step, and then a half step. There's my entire scale. There's one that we know for sure goes up, and that is scale degree 7. We also know that there's one that for sure is going down. More about that later, because today we're going to fiddle around with that a little bit. Because there's no rule without exception, except that rule, that there's no rule without exceptions. Okay, so you decided that this one goes down, then put the leading tone, which is A natural, put that here so that you create that all desirable contrary motion, that you have the outer voices go in contrary motion. It is not the only way to do it, but it is a safe way. And for now, I think it's the best and the best tool that you can learn for yourself in terms of part writing, because everything else really falls neatly into place. Okay. So I'm going to erase this one because you know B flat major scale. Not so interesting, really. But I am going to create an F dominant 7 chord, and I'm going to write it up the way that I would just suggest that you do. So you start on scale degree 5, the scale degree 5, right? And so the difference between that one and this one is that scale degree 5 is a single note, the 5th note in the scale. And Roman numeral 5 is the chord that is above it, harmonized out of notes in B flat. So I'm going to stack up here. I have my F major triad. I'm going to add a minor 7 to that. That is the kind of 7 that is a whole step down from the root of the chord, which is B flat. You can also project the root up here and say, what is a whole step down from my root? The root is that note which gives it the name. And if you were to label this one here in terms of chord language, just chord chart, you know, like you see in pop charts or in jazz notation, but also in sometimes in the analysis. I mean, you just see these chord labeled as such. We just call it F7. We wouldn't call it F dominant 7, although sometimes you see this. This is just harder to read because there's more writing involved, and therefore it's also harder to write, and it's just cumbersome. So these are the same thing, but F7 is that. Okay, so we just start doing our inventory. F is gone because we put that in the bass right away. A is also gone, and now we need to put an E flat and a C. We can see that if I and try to write in as close position as you can. So try to stack the chords after you've done the outer voices. Try to stack them as closely as possible. So that means that if I have two choices, I can either put the C here or I can put the C up here, and vice versa. I can either put the E flat here or the E flat here. If I put the E flat here, we can see that that's a pretty high tenor. Not untoward. I mean, they can definitely sing that. But now I have a problem because I can't put C up here, right? Therefore, I must put C down here. And now we have voice crossing, that the tenor is actually above the alto. Yes, Angelica.
I have a question. So in the example and the way I did the homework was having the outer voices as the 4th degree and then going to the 3rd degree.
Sure.
But so you can do it either way for the first time? Okay.
Yeah. But it's just that, which is perfectly fine, because the 4th scale degree would be E flat, right? And then you have that going down to D, and that's fine, but now you're moving in the same direction. It's not a problem, really, because what you're doing here is that you're putting an active scale degree above it. Perfectly fine, and you're going to have parallel thirds with the outer voices here with the B flat and the D. Do you understand? So you're not violating anything, but this is the sure way to do it. But let me just continue here, right? So what you've done is not wrong at all. It's just a different way of doing it, and as we go forward, we will refine the various options that we have. The best thing to do, first of all, the only thing to do is to show up like you do, not you, Angelica, but the rest, the whole group here. And you guys are the ones who are showing up every time. So that's the first place to be, right? The best thing you can do for yourself is to have an already filled in homework assignment, so you could follow and see what was my thought process here, and is that right or wrong or whatever, right? Sometimes we don't get to do our work on time, I understand that, and then it's good enough to be here, but you will gain more knowledge if you've done it ahead of time, so you come prepared in a way, right? Okay, so since this doesn't work, we can see that that C, which is the same as that C, right? I mean, middle C is middle C, this is middle C, this is also middle C, and we can see that the tenors are now above the altos. So if that doesn't work for one reason or another, either it produces parallel octaves, parallel fifths, or whatever, or in this case, it produces what we call voice crossing, then switch them around. Basically, do that, and now do this. And now everything works out perfectly fine. You see? Everything works out really well. Even these two, as you can see, are going in contrary motion. So we have a lot of contrary motion going on here. And here, this one goes to 1. So there's one of the possible resolutions. I think this one is the best one because it produces that all-important contrary motion between the outer voices. But we should be able to part write these in any which way that we can. And you will see that because I followed the voices in the way that they naturally resolve themselves linearly, meaning from here to here, I'm not looking at the chord and say, oh, there's a fifth missing, right? Don't worry about the fifth. In this, when you come from a complete dominant 7 chord to a tonic chord and both are in root position, the tonic will be incomplete. It will just be B flat, B flat, B flat, and a D. And it sounds perfect. You don't need the fifth in it. The fifth, you'll probably hear me over the course of hopefully many semesters together. You'll hear me say this 1 billion times. The fifth in a chord does not do anything that the root doesn't do just as well. You don't need a fifth in a chord, in a triad. You don't need a fifth. You don't need a fifth. You don't need so the root or an extra root replaces that missing fifth. So don't worry about that. You cannot get to that without violating some rule that is more important than not having a fifth in the chord. I know it's not, it's probably not, oops, it's probably not the completely accurate representation, but let me just try, because you can hear it. I mean, you particularly hear it when you sing, or you can also hear it very accurately on the piano. On the guitar, it's a little bit less obvious, I think. But if I have a root position chord here, here's one without a fifth, here's one with the fifth. If you hear them together, with the fifth, without the fifth, with the fifth, without the fifth, you can't hear the difference. And anyone who tells you, oh, I can definitely hear the difference. I mean, I've tried this for 15 years now. Try it out in the classroom, turn the keyboard away from people and just playing the tune, they can't hear the difference because oh, I can definitely hear the difference. And I play the same chord all the time. And it appears that I do that here too, but I'm not, I'm actually lifting up this. Now you can see that I'm lifting it up. And here's, there's a textual difference, I admit that. But in terms of its quality as a tonic, I mean, you can clearly hear that this is a major triad as opposed to minor, or as opposed to anything else, as opposed to, you know, you can clearly hear what kind of triad this is. So its quality as a triad doesn't depend on the presence of a fifth. Just doesn't. Okay, moving on, yeah? Actually, it's a little impractical for me to use that side of the board, so I'm just gonna erase this. You can always get it back. There's the wonderful thing about the review on YouTube. You can just get it back by moving your cursor, right? Okay, I'm just gonna move the notes here. And say 5, 4, 3 now. And it's still in B flat, so we're just practicing that. And today, as I said, later on, we're gonna go one more step forward. I'll send you out a homework exercise probably tomorrow when I get into the office. Okay, so same dominant 7 chord. It's the same chord, right? It's now just in second inversion. So let me just do that. Again, I'm just going to erase this. Actually, I can put it underneath it because I don't need that. So this is an F7 chord. And second inversion, this would be if I had it on A, that would be my 6/5 chord. That would be first inversion. And if I base it off of C, I'm going to do that. That would be my F7 chord. Oops, 7/7. I didn't mean to do that. F7 over C. Or if I call it anything, I call it 5 and then 4 and 3 because I have a 3 here, a 4 here, and 6 here. So the full name for it would be 6/4/3. Right? That's just the 5th scale degree, is the root of the chord, which is F. And I have above the bass note, which is C. I'm going to place my C. Let me just place it here. Like here. I could also place it up here, but that gives me very little wiggle room, right? So I'm going to place my C here, and above that C, I have a 3 and a 4. I also have a 6th, but that you will normally not see in professional literature. I don't know why, but that's just a convention, you know, like certain last names, or if you have 2 first names and you're sort of a fancy kind, you say F. Lyndon Brown. And you don't see that the guy is also Francis Lyndon Brown or whatever, right? You see that very often, especially people who live around Washington, D.C. They love these sort of double barrel names where the first one is not the one you use, but your middle name. It's probably some French idea. I wouldn't be surprised, although I don't know. Okay, so this is the, in the key of B flat, this is the 2nd scale degree. And in the way that we're doing it right now, the 2nd scale degree goes to 1. So this one goes down to B flat, yeah? Yeah. So, so whole step down to scale degree 1. This is the way that we are resolving at the moment. We're resolving scale degree 1 exclusively to scale degree 1. Sorry, that's the scale. We're resolving scale degree 2 to 1. It can also go up, as we'll see later on in this lesson. Okay, so we've decided that, and do it this way, please. Write out the bass line. And when you do part writing with longer progressions, really do yourself the favor. That'll be for later on, right? Write out the bass line first, and then try to see if you can sketch a soprano line that's sort of out of the notes that you need in whatever chords you're writing out. Try to see if you can get the top line to behave in terms of the bass. So given that we put this one to go down, I mean, it does go down, right? But we could also have it go up later on. You'll see in a few minutes, you'll see it behaving differently. I will now create contrary motion by doing this. By saying this goes down, what goes down must come up. I mean, it must be balanced out by a different note that has a different direction. I'm going to erase the whole thing. This looks messy, and I don't like that. Okay, and now we fill in the rest of the notes in the chord. I'm going to write out my F dominant 7 chord again. A is gone, and now C is gone. So now we have to place an F and an E flat. Here I have a choice, right? But I mean, given that I really prefer to write as close as possible. I could also have written an E flat here, right? But that's further away from the A. So I put the F here, and then the E flat up here. And it's not easy to see unless you have a trained eye, of course, which you will in rapid time. You'll see that these two clash. It's just not easy to see that unless they're in the same clef. This one here, we know that when scale degree 5 is in an inner voice, you can just leave it alone. You don't need to resolve that. And E flat goes to D. And here's the resolution to that one. Capiche? I can see nodding heads and thumbs up and very good. So this one here seems to have flown off very easily. All right. Let me move on, yeah. New key, same procedure. All right, we have F major. Again, 5/7, that will be a C7 chord. If you're unsure about that, write on F major scale and pin out the fifth scale degree, and you'll see that it is a C major triad with a minor 7. So B flat, as would be the reality in the key of F. Okay, C. Let's say we'll have this one go up to the tonic. So I'm resolving scale degree 5 to 1. And given that I've made it go up, let me now have a note that is sure to go down. And that would be scale degree 4. So now the overriding concern for us is, or the overriding preference for us is to create contrary motion between the outer voices, that they behave in such a way that they go in opposite direction of one another. That way you are sure to not make some of the mistakes that will slow you down and would also reveal you as a bad part writer, basically, bad arranger or whatever. This is just as easy as anything else. So now C is gone and B flat has gone. I now have to place a G and an E. Pretty easy because our guideline is to write as close as possible. If I put the E here, I can see that there's a long distance between these two upper notes. Not impossible, but not our first preference. Just not the place where we want to start. So I want to place the G here and I want to place the E here. Why not the E down here? Because it's a little low and because the F is already here. And then we can see that if I place the E here, we can see that since this bass here is going up to the F, it would actually pass over or cross over where the tenor was before. That's called voice crossing, and it's not considered ideal. It's not such a bad thing, but it's better to avoid it. Here, F, leading tone going to F, scale degree 2, going to 1. And you see, again, by following the natural tendency of the notes, we are ending up with a chord that has 1, 2, 3 roots and a third, which is perfectly fine, which is in fact how you should do it. Okay, so far so good. Great. Let me do the 5-4-3. Five, 4, 3 would be still a C major triad with a minor 7, also known as a dominant 7 chord, a C dominant 7 chord in second inversion. That means it sits not on the, here are 4 notes, right? Root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. It sits not on the root, not on the 3rd, but on the 5th. Root position, 1st inversion, 2nd inversion, and 3rd inversion. That one, these two we've already done. The 3rd inversion, the 4-2 chord, and the 6-5 chord we've already done because they're easy as pie. And they behave very much in the same way. They're just sort of mirror images of one another. So, okay, so this one here is still a C dominant 7 chord. I'm just going to have clean notes here and say, okay, I'm going to choose this one here because that's the chordal 5th. And that is what is in the bass. Okay. Just do it here because otherwise it'll be a very, very, very low resolution. It's not onto it, but it's easier here. Scale degree 2, going to 1. By doing that. Now I'm going to have my leading tone going up. I'm going to place it up here because it gives me a little more room a little more wiggle room. So I'm going to have scale degree 7. So now in this one here, G is gone, right? Here, and E is also gone. So now the inner voice is here, writing in close position. So B flat is now gone, and C, okay, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. That one goes to 3. You see it has a flat, so you must suspect that it's on the way down when it moves. That's why it's notated with a flat. Flats go down, sharps go up. I know that's not always the case, but it is more often the case than not. So have that general assumption when you read notation. C, inner voice, scale degree 5, just leave it. Don't need to resolve it. Okay, I can see relieved, nodding heads, and which is very good. Please mean no end. All right, so far so good? Perfect. All right, let me show you another little trick. Actually, let me play something for you first. Upon my guitar. I'll see if I can get my guitar in tune. Okay, so here's a little phrase. Whatever, but this one here is the one we're interested in. You heard this a billion times probably. Oops. You know, those kind of noodling around kind of things. It's called a tonic expansion because what I'm doing here is that I'm prolonging or extending my tonic. This is also still the same chord. I haven't changed out of the chord. I've just made it more interesting, right? I could have done this, or you know. So the chord that we're interested in are not these two, because these two are just the same chord, sort of voice type differently and inverted, so they sound more interesting. They're actually the same chord. So it's the same dish, is just presented in a different bowl, right? But what we're interested in is this chord here, because this is our good old dominant 7 chord in second inversion. So that's our 4/3 chord. Going to our first inversion of the tonic. Very, very common. Very common way to sort of expand the phrase and to harmonize, basically. These are all harmonization skills, which come in very, very handy when you're arranging things, especially for chorus. That's kind of the overriding thing here is that we're learning a tool how to arrange the chorus, you know, so you can use that skill in your churches if you're the one in charge of that sort of stuff. And at the same time, we're also learning our music theory. We're learning so many different things. We're learning how to spell chords, right, which is very important. We're learning how to arrange them so they move smoothly from one to the other. And at the same time, we're also learning how to analyze music that's already written, because we can recognize these things. We just haven't gotten to that part yet, because we can recognize these things when we see them in print and when we hear them. So, that's that thing that I learned to do. It's actually a sort of, I think, a great jack of all trades tool. Okay, so I'm going to replicate what I just did here. I'm going to have I'm going to use the key of C, and I'm going to have my my chordal third. Okay, so if I'm in the key of C, this is a 1 chord, right? I'm going to have scale degree 3 on top of that. And then I'm just gonna have, let me just do it in 3 parts actually, because it's kind of easy. Actually, I can't. I need more than that. Okay, so that will be it. That doesn't look too bad, I think. So now I'm gonna have scale degree 4 here. Okay. Let me erase these things and make them a little closer. So scale degree 4. And we could hear that I went up, if I isolate the outer voices, then you can hear that I do a, that sounds so nice, it was in 2. These are called parallel 10th because I have C and I have E, which is what we call a 10th, or the same as a third, but with an octave apart, right? An octave plus a third. So you might say, well, wait a minute, an octave, which is 8 plus 3, that doesn't give 10, does it? That's all because we're starting on 1. That's the problem. We're not counting the root twice because it's already 1, or whichever way you want to look at it. It is it's funky math, I agree. But these are parallel 10s. So that's what I'm going to do here. I said, wait a minute, scale degree 4 going to 5? What's wrong with that, right? When you have parallel 10th, you can do that. And the chord in between is your good old 5, 4, 3, and it now goes to a 1 in first inversion. So this one here, if I were to put a chord label under that, that would be C over E, and this one here would be G7 over D, and this one would just be C. I think what I want to do, given that tomorrow and all that, I think I'll hold off with the homework until next week. Let's have one more lesson on this stuff there on Monday, because we're back to regular schedule on Monday, right? So I'm not going to give you any, I've just decided I'm just going to go through this one more time and then give you a homework assignment, because there's nothing more frustrating than sitting there with a homework assignment. You're not really sure what you're doing. And I'm not really sure what we're learning, frankly, if we're not sure what we're doing. So here, I'm gonna harmonize this one here with a G7 chord. So I already got, so let me write that up. This is a G7. I'm just gonna write this, and if you do it this way, I can promise you that you will not get into any kind of trouble ever. The F is gone, right? And the D is also gone. So I have to place a B and a G. Well, the G would seem to be flying off very easily here, right? Because I'm just repeating it. I'm simply moving as little as possible. Just don't move if you don't need to. They're the same chords. People who move around all the time, oh, I like this sound, that's all very well. And on the piano or the guitar, whatever, it's not such a big deal because you can just press another key or put your finger down on another fret and you'll have the note. Not so with the voice. It's much more complicated to write for the voice. So now, okay, so the G is gone. Sorry, crossed out the wrong one. That is not the first time, by the way. And now I have to place a B. Okay, this all works out really, really well. Right, do you see that? And B is the leading tone, that goes back up to C, right? And G, I'm just going to keep that. And now I understand that I have obviously a first inversion tonic where I have 2 Gs in it, but that's fine because it's on the way to some other place. And we see, have we done anything wrong here? Parallel 10 or parallel third, right? Same thing. Parallel third, there's nothing wrong with that. Are there any voices? So this one's the only one that's moving. This one here is going down by a step. Is there anything else that goes down by a step? No, actually, it's perfect. It can't, there are no, learn these techniques and you don't have to spend half an hour sort of correcting your own part writing if you sit the entrance to grad school. That's our first stop along the way. Actually, our first stop would probably be the ETS test. I just finished it a couple of days ago. So the exit test that you're probably going to be the first ones to be exposed to. And I'm not really sure when, but there's one section that we're still debating whether we should take out as atonal analysis, which we'll get to. Actually, that's not your section. So we'll get to that. And it's not a concern, but the first stop along the way is to be able to nail these kind of exams. This is what we call, because we can see that I'm going from a tonic via this chord here, which is called a passing chord, to another tonic. And this is simply just a prolongation and expansion of the tonic. A prolongation, you're simply making the tonic a little bit longer by inserting a passing chord in between. You could also have inserted a passing tone. You could have a chord here. Yeah, I'm just saying. And now a little passing tone. Well, I could have done that in the bass as well. You see? Or I can harmonize it. All those options are available. Passing chord, passing tone, same procedure, same understanding that you're not really changing the fundamental harmony of the example. You're simply just making it better, right? You're adding a different sauce to the dish. Sometimes the sauce is the most memorable thing about a dish. Think about an ice cream cone. Very often it's the topping that's the most memorable thing, isn't it? The fudge on top of these sprinkles or whatever. I just had a cone for the first time this year, yesterday. So, but also think of spaghetti and meatballs, right? We probably all had that, and probably most of us like that as a dish. I think the most memorable thing is not the spaghetti, nor the meatballs, because in and of themselves, they wouldn't be very, if you eat a meatball without any sauce, any condiments, it's a little sort of, spaghetti certainly by itself is not very exciting. So the most memorable thing about that dish is actually the tomato sauce in it, I think. So these things are profoundly important if you want them to be important. I mean, the musical equivalent of somebody who doesn't know how to, or what options there are for harmonizing, would be the equivalent of a chef who doesn't know his or her condiments or the things that actually make the dish really stand out. I can assure you that if, let's say, you go into New York City and you establish yourself as a chef and you have your own little food truck or whatever, and you serve spaghetti and meatball without the sauce, you're not gonna last long. You're just not. I mean, it's just a hunch. Or if you go to the Central Park and sell hot dogs, and you have no mustard, no ketchup, no relish, no sauerkraut, no mayonnaise, people are just going to go to another hot dog stand. They just aren't. And the same here. If you're the kind of musician who say, "Well, I play really well, I've got my heart in it and all that, I just don't know any chords, and I don't know how to arrange for chorus. And there's a whole bunch of things I can't communicate with my fellow musicians because I don't know the names of anything that I'm doing. I just do it really well." You're not going to stand the same chance as somebody who can do all that in an employment situation. Maybe you will create your own little or big entity that becomes world famous. I mean, God bless you. It's possible. Of course it's possible, but it's not very likely. It's more likely that if you have good tools and if you know your métier, your job, right? If you know all of that, you stand a better chance of getting a job. It may not be the last job in your life. Maybe you will be famous at some point. Maybe this, maybe that, who knows? But it's the best chance you can give for yourself in order to make a living out of music. It's very simple. This is not art, by the way. You know, we're not studying composition here. You know, we're not even discussing style or politics or race or any, you know, taste. we're just pulling out a few nails and learning how to put them in a board with a hammer. That's it. Let's start there because that's a good skill to have. No matter what we want to construct, that's a good skill to have. All right, I gotta go rest because I'm fading now. And I'll see you tomorrow at the seminar, yeah? Okay, cool. Any questions before we close? Oh, very good. Okay.
My God bless, Professor.
Yeah. So we'll see you on Monday, yeah? Regular lesson, don't worry about homework, just complete the ones that we had already. And we'll see you on Monday. We'll hammer this one more time, different keys, and sort of, you know, start our stuff once again. Yeah? Cool. See you later.